side of things. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at the history, the evolution, some of the use cases, and some of the data that is actually highly interesting. So it's actually thanks to this guy that we're all sitting here. This is the first CryptoKitty ever issued, and it's sort of it's the Gen Zero. It's a very nice introduction. But if you think about it, it's sort of, a little bit absurd because of this guy. Everything in the NFT space is actually happening. But this guy got issued in 2017, right? But before that, there was a lot of stuff going on. So in 2019, we got the Bitcoin network, which has nothing to do at this point with NFTs. But in 2014, we got Counterparty, which is sort of a proto-smart contract network that allows you to issue tokens and proto-NFTs, really. Now, there were a few years in between, but Rare Pepe, some of you are smiling, yeah, that's good. People know this. Rare Pepe existed way before 2016, right? And the point of Pepes were all of these memes, right? And people created them, people started creating them. We actually got a lot of user-generated content. And what happened is that Pepes built an economy around these memes, right? And the problem that they had, or that the users had, were that people were copying them, right? So people started putting on watermarks and branding them and stuff like that. And in 2016, on the Counterparty protocol, people actually started to tokenize them. So we got this very early on a economy around Rare Pepes, as well as these proto networks. And I'm saying proto because it's the resemblance is closer to an ERC20 token than an actual 721 contract or an actual NFT or modern NFT. Later in 2017, Everdreams, Swiss company, started producing games with non-fungible items. So if you've been to the engine talk before, what they're doing is they're really tokenizing certain assets within the game. And this is not a new concept, right? You need to take this into account. I've been reading, when I was preparing for this and I did some research, there were articles being issued in 2014, 15, talking about the exact same concepts. Having a different economy, different gameplay, you've got unique items, you're going to have this huge economy. Now, fast forward a few years, we're still not there. So just keep in mind that this is something that's actually been going on and spoken about for quite some years. Book of Orbs and Spell of Genesis are the main games that Everdream produced, but they're actually behind the whole crypto crystals economy. So go and check that out. It's actually quite early on, based on Counterparty. Now, in 2015, we got Ethereum, and if you've been to Bruno's talk, you know that it's still in draft. 1.0 is a draft version of Ethereum, but it's part of this whole thing of ICOs and smart contracts. The promise was very big, and the visions were very big. And so in 2015, we got a proposal for the ERC20 token. This sort of ignited this whole ICO space, but it actually took 2 years to finalize the ERC20 standard. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't know, but we've got a span of 2 years of very shitty contracts. There's a span that people were creating different smart contracts, which means that the whole ERC20 space was sort of in turmoil. There was a lot of stuff going on. And up to this day, if you talk to the developer community that deal with these things and the Ethereum community, not really excited about the ERC20 standard at all. Now, in 2017, what we got is a proposal for ERC 721. This was started by Dieter Shirley from Axiom Zen, which is the company behind CryptoKitties, and the guy that created CryptoPunks. So there's a few people that were sort of collaborating on this, but they didn't take it to the end, which means that we actually got CryptoKitties, CryptoPunks, and a few others before the standard was finalized. Now, the implications of this are not big because it's just a few games, but if you talk to, for instance, Devin from OpenSea or anybody dealing with these smart contracts, they need to manually integrate their 721 contracts or their non-fungible smart contracts. So what I'm trying to tell you is we did have a span of time that there was only one standardized token, so the ERC20. But up to this day, and this is what people actually don't know, we only have 2 confirmed token standards on Ethereum, right? It's the ERC20 and the SAN21. Now, we've heard from Engine before that 1155 is sort of in the final stages, which means that if nobody objects to it, it's going to take a few weeks to finalize. But an interesting thing that happened with SAN21 is William Entricken sort of took over. He took the lead on finalizing it, right? And so I spoke with William a few weeks ago about this, and he said, listen, when we sort of pushed this forward, we actually had to invent a process to standardize things, because the Ethereum community just didn't have that. Hence, it took 2 years for ERC20 to be finalized. Now, especially in 2018, other blockchains follows. So we've got EOS, we've got Neo, we've got OneChain, we've got a few others that are also working on this. So the point here is that NFTs are something seriously looked at other blockchains, and it's being diversified. And this is what happens. And this is just a small part from the collectibles that we've got out there. You know, as funny as this is actually the NFT space right now. This is the majority of it. This is how it looks. So very early on, we got articles like this. So clone your CryptoKitties in 20 minutes, right? Just clone the contracts, do some magic in the background, do some shitty design on it, and then you get stuff like this. You know, you tokenize a picture of Elon Musk or of Slovenia. Sort of funny, isn't it? Right? But a lot of people drove the hype train very early on. They saw CryptoKitties benefit on this, and they thought, you know, let's just put something out, let's try to sell it, and let's see what's going on. So before the guy from Engine was speaking about, it's a term for that. It's called an initial deed offering. So if you're a game, right, and you want to kickstart your economy, you create a bunch of items and you sell them before you launch the game. It's called an initial deed offering. And a lot of people did this, but they just never developed gameplay in the background. So we ended up with a bunch of these collectibles. But you know, to be honest, I think still to this day, gaming is a catalyst for adoption. It is a catalyst to push certain technologies forward. Most recently, I think you all know this, Pokemon. Pokemon actually introduced and popularized augmented reality. Right? Before Pokemon Go, we didn't have an actual massively used augmented reality use case. Right? Currently, it's used in manufacturing, developing planes and complicated machinery. Right? You can see people wearing larger glasses. But the point is that currently in blockchain gaming, we've got a few players, and these are all games. So Decentraland, you probably know Decentraland. It's basically Second Life on blockchain. That's how they describe it. That's how you should view it. It's a VR experience still being built. Ember Swords is one of the first, or at the point when we spoke, they were the first MMORPG developing stuff with incorporating NFTs as well. And this one is actually exciting. So Plague Hunters is a game developed by a series of a non-blockchain development studio that is going to be released on PS4. And this was actually approved by Sony. So in, I think, Q1 or Q2, we should see an actual release on the PlayStation Network. Now, just think about it. We've heard about UX and a few experiences. And if you own any crypto, you know how difficult it is to get an account, I don't know, on Bitstamp, upload some money, change it for ETH and buy some tokens, and where you know how to use them and what to do with them. So it's just a very bad experience right now. So what these guys are going to do, and a lot of others, is you're going to showcase how to deal with the user experience, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're Plague Hunters and you want to address 1 million people, you're probably not going to deny them a sale if they don't have a wallet, right? You're probably going to be thinking what to do, what solutions to use, who's going to take custody of these assets, what to do on a larger scale. Because it's something, if CryptoKitties is pumping out a lot of kitties, and hundreds of people are using them, but it's something completely different if you've got game playing for 1 million people and less than 1% have actually crypto and have a wallet. Right? So it's sort of, we're going to see answers to a lot of edge cases. But the point is that collectibles in gaming, at least in my opinion, are just the beginning. So we're going to see a lot of use cases ranging from pure crypto collectibles all the way to physical assets. And physical assets, I mean, for instance, this building. There's a talk going to be given today by Craig on content and identity. I do employ you to listen to that, highly interesting, as well as about legal, right? Because I had a lot of discussions with different people, ranging from art, real estate, identity, you name it, right? And we often come to the conclusion that what's holding back use cases is not actually the technology that much, but it's often the legal framework. It's often the user experience. So a lot of different things need to be solved in order to make this happen. Now, this is sort of a quick mapping of the space, of the NFT space, but it's by far not complete, right? Just to keep in mind. So we've got a few projects working in infrastructure, the blockchains itself, as well as Matic and Loom are scaling solutions, and we've got WAX, Engine, Zero X is also in that space. OpenSea as a exchange, Rarebits as an exchange, and so on. So we've got a few wallets. I'm actually listing wallets because 6 months ago, no wallet supported 721s. Like, there was absolutely no way to view your CryptoKitty, for instance. Etherscan didn't have any support for this. So the transformation that all of these wallets support this is actually quite staggering. And it tells you a little bit what people in the space think about this. On the right-hand side, we've got different stats. So, stats maybe not the best word, but Etherscan, nonfungible.com, CryptoDex, DATRader, and so on and so on. These basically tell you a lot about usage, transactions, and so on. So if you want to have a look, live view of the space, that's probably the best position to go to. On the top, we've got collectibles in gaming. I tend to separate these because they might overlap to some extent, but they really shouldn't, right? It's sort of a very different scenario that they're addressing. And these two boxes, these are just examples, but the point is that we could split this into 10, 15, 20 different categories maybe, because there's a few projects working in different areas. Just to give you an idea, property and real estate doc are working in the real estate segment. Art is actually extremely popular. We've got actually quite a few players in that space. Art is sort of, from a legal standpoint of view, it's very easy to deal with. It's not highly regulated, so a lot of players move into that very early on. Just a few numbers. Market cap of the crypto market. This is a few days old, so today it might be 20% less than again. We're going to talk about that. But just in comparison, right? If you're talking about New York Stock Exchange, the market cap is $22 trillion. So the space in general, although very hyped and spoken about, is scales away from market capitalization of the stock market. Now, there's a question mark in the NFT market cap, and this is intentional. If you think about it, let's say the real estate market. The most accurate estimate of what the market cap for real estate market is based on previous sales, which is not live, which is not accurate. We've got a lot of leasing going on. We've got a lot of apartment sharing. How do we value that? Right? So it's very hard. It's almost impossible to put a number of a real estate market there. Art. It's almost impossible to tell you the value of the global art market. Yeah, you've got estimates, obviously, but the point is that it's almost impossible to do. NFT means non-fungible token, which means a unique asset. So unique, literally, you're unique, right? Your degree is unique. I don't think anybody wants to, put a dollar value on their identity and their credentials, right? So there's this notion that it's almost impossible to value these things, although people try. Another very interesting aspect are the transactions being done. So this is last week, the transactions on the Bitcoin network, 1.7 million. Transactions on Ethereum, 3.8 million. From that, on Ethereum, we had 110K ERC-721 transactions. Right? Just look at the scale of the difference, and it's probably not even proportionally right. But the point is that if you'd be looking at this 6, 8, 10 months ago, this would be maybe 1,000 transactions, maybe 200 transactions. Right? So it's going up, it's increasing. People are looking at this, people are using this. But I really want to point out the scale of difference that we're dealing with. Right? If you look at deployed smart contracts, and this is available on Etherscan, you can go and check this out. 721s have 802 live contracts, whereas ERC-20s have over 150,000 deployed contracts. Right? So the proportion is quite obvious. But again, in last year, October, November, December, maybe this number would be 1, 2, 3. Right? So we've come quite far. But I think it's good to have that reality check that although this is an emerging technology, the emphasis is on emerging. It's still in its infancy. Now, if we break down transactions, who's doing what, we see that about 60% is CryptoKitties. And you're going to see later on, I've got daily active users as well. We're going to tie these together. So we've got CryptoKitties, which basically dominate the space, Gods Unchained, and Decentraland. These three are basically the biggest players. Right? It's 3/4 of the transactions are being done by them. Decentraland, in my opinion, the healthiest one. Then we've got a few other ones. Other is basically just a culmination of everything else. So there's hundreds of players in there. But I think this speaks for itself. Right? This just means that CryptoKitties is the largest player in there. Now, Engine spoke about gaming. I do want to add some perspective into that, just so that you know what size of a crypto market you're dealing here. So EOS Knights is a game based on the EOS network. They do basically the same gameplay, sort of collectible slash RPG game. They've got 4K users. My Crypto Heroes would be the top Ethereum game quotes, just over 500, and CryptoKitties 348. Now, keep in mind, 348 for CryptoKitties, and we've got 60% of 721 transactions. So what's going on here? What they're doing is they're just pumping out a lot of CryptoKitties. That's literally what they're doing. They've got tens, hundreds of designers, and they're just pumping out new CryptoKitties. If you go to OpenSea, you're going to see, I think they deploy thousands of new kitties. Funny word. They deploy thousands of new kitties each week, right? So what's going on is they're putting out stuff, but nobody's actually really using them. So if we compare this to the non-crypto space, and that's why Engine is trying to partner up with Ubisoft, and if you talk with App or with Wax, for instance, their sort of flagship product is Opskins. Right? Opskin is basically a marketplace for all of these, but it's not marketed towards the crypto community. So Talking Tom, 1 million plus daily active users, CSGO 400K, and the PlayStation Network 2.3 million active users per day. Now think about this: Plague Hunters is releasing a game to that network, right? So it's gonna be serious usage there, and I'm very bullish on that actually. To be honest, I think it's going to answer quite a few questions. But the point is that we spoke a lot about gaming, right, and collectibles and stuff like that. But the point is that blockchain is still extremely, it's a small space and it's still very hard to deal with. And I'm not talking about ideological concepts, what is decentralization and what does peer-to-peer transactions actually mean for banking and the middleman and stuff like that. I'm talking about you guys deploying smart contracts. It took you a few hours to get to know this. If you're a serious institution and you want to do production grade stuff, it takes you months to get to that point, right? So it's not a very easy process. we've got a very poor user experience right now. MetaMask is sort of, let's say, the best alternative, what we've got right now, but it's really lacking behind. You know, if you're an application developer and you need to deal with MetaMask, it's just a very painstaking process to say the least. Which means that, you know, a combination of these things, and I'm not even mentioning TPS and the problems with Ethereum and volatility of blockchains. This just means that we've got very few use cases, and not just very few use cases. Very few projects are coming to the point that you've got production enterprise-grade applications being put up. Now, where we come in is basically in the more of the development part, right? We spoke about a poor user experience and slow and costly process. What we're doing is we're trying to address the non-financial segment, the non-gaming segment, because we think that there's a huge gap currently existing. But like I said, you know, it's one part is the technology, the other part is the other stuff as well. So if I have to give you a one-sentence pitch, ZeroXert is an open protocol for authentication and management of unique assets. That's basically what it boils down. This is the high-level view of the infrastructure, what we're doing. So in the middle, you've got the whole protocol. On the left-hand side, we've got libraries being developed. So the first version of the whole framework is going to be released next month, which is basically going to be a JavaScript library. So if you know Ruby, the equivalent of what we're doing is Rails. That's basically as simple as I can put it. You're going to have a few functions to it, namely the minter, a way to decentrally exchange assets, as well as functions for the 20th and the SAM21 assets. Now, very interestingly, we also try to go into the convention space, and conventions are asset type standards, right? So what I think is going to happen down the road, we're not going to end up with thousands of standards. What we're going to see, at least short term, is the development of a few other standards, but really, I think SAM21 is a good benchmark to move forward, right? Obviously, you've got different use cases, like Engine spoke about 1155. It's a different use case, and I think they need a different token for that, different token standard for that. But in reality, what's going to happen is, with conventions, we're creating metadata standards for different assets. So, give you an example. If today we work with 3 companies in real estate, for instance, and each one creates a different set of metadata, in 5 years you're going to have more of these companies, and everybody's going to be developing their own metadata for this. What you end up with is complete interoperability, the opposite of complete interoperability, actually. So these applications are not going to be able to share these assets. Now, think of the implication. Let's say I tokenize this building. Let's say it's possible, right? With company B. And in 5 years, I see there's company X has this huge market, right? And I want to sell it there, but I have no way of transferring it there, or that application actually reading what I put in. So it's very important that very early on we get at least minimum agreements of what has to be put into these metadata sequences for different assets. Currently, everything is being developed on Ethereum, but we are looking actively at other chains as well, just to mitigate risk. The fact is that down the line, you're probably going to have different chains that are going to be specialized in different things. Centralization, decentralization, and then TPS here is sort of shifting volatility as well. And I think the project owners or the end user application should be able to switch these as they need fit. We are working on not on a different standard, but we did upgrade the SAM21 with additional functionality, so that it's more fit for instance, supply chains or different more specialized use cases. This is an example of a a JavaScript library for becoming an issuer. It's in draft, and this is a few months old, so it might not be accurate. But this is actually going to be released in, like I said, mid-January. So do circle back. Everything is open source. It's going to be released on our GitHub as well. The idea is to make the whole process of you creating applications and use cases a bit smoother. Because the point is that right now, Ethereum is awesome, but it's just very slow in terms of adoption. You don't have hundreds of thousands Solidity developers, but you do have hundreds of thousands application developers. And what we see in terms of adoption is actually a two-step process. So the first step is we need to be able to address the needs of developers that actually create end-user applications versus the low-level blockchain Solidity developers. They shouldn't be dealing with end-user applications or the UX up there. They should just figure out proof of stake. That's your job. But like I said, we've got a bunch of end-user application developers, and we should be addressing them. And the next step is then the actual end-user applications. So one part is the technology, but we're also, if you're dealing with any kind of development, do check out these frameworks. ProModel, Spectrum, and Hayspec are open source frameworks for development. We use them to develop our applications. We actually created these applications. So you want to check that out. It's all open source. Oh, if you're doing anything with 721, we released a 721 validator so that you can check out if you have a valid smart contract. This shouldn't be a problem if you go to the 721 GitHub and forward that. But some people write their own, so you can check if it's a valid contract. Now on the ecosystem side, look, the point is that technology is one part of the story, but we need to be able to address use cases, business cases, legal stuff, everything else that comes with it, because technology for the sake of technology doesn't bring us anywhere. Right? We need to be able to address actual challenges, and that's why we decided to move forward with, for instance, the Non-Fungible Alliance. We've got a few blog post initiatives, some of the software approaches. This is basically a screenshot of the webpage of the Non-Fungible Alliance. So what we do here, we unite, we give a platform for all of the NFT projects. Currently, it's 70 plus projects participating in this. We're talking with industry experts because the reality is this is the space. Like, this is basically the space. It's young developers. A lot of people don't have 20 years in supply chain or 15 years in education. So there's this disconnect between the actual technology being created and the actual use cases being addressed. So we're just trying to provide a bridge to facilitate this knowledge flow and resources flow. So if you're a project, you come talk to me. This is the part that I really dislike, giving predictions on what the space is going to look like. But I'm in this unique position that I get to talk to a lot of people and see what they are working on, what's cooking, what's being released, what's being developed, and based on that, I do want to offer you some insights into that. So currently, these are all the challenges that we spoke about. And it's low daily active users. It's a poor UX. We've got multiple standards, still experimenting, exploring. We've got very few use cases, blockchain infrastructure projects, problems. But the insight that I have is be bullish, really be bullish. We've got tools that are coming out to solve UX problems on a scale I cannot tell you. For instance, check out Bitsky. Bitsky.com is a custody solution for wallets. It literally gives you access to a wallet with a username and password. HTC Exodus is an Android-run phone that has wallet implementations on a system level, right? So if you have a wallet, it's like Google Sign-In, right? SSL is system-wide, and if you don't have to sign into your calendar every time, right? It's a single sign-on. Opera, the browser, do check that out. It's fantastic. Not a lot of people use it. The Brave browser, for instance. These are all absolutely amazing tools that nobody uses because the crypto community is small. Right? So what we're going to see, because a lot of these tools are coming out, we're going to see expansion of use cases. So not that much. It's not that much about the actual technology because it's being built. It's going to be prepared. We need to prepare ourselves to solve business cases, to solve legal issues, and so on. So on the other side of things, a trend is towards fewer ICOs. I wouldn't say that the ICO market is dead because you've still got people going heavily into that space. But we do see a lot more institutional investments. We do see more LPs and bigger VCs moving into that space. So this is definitely a change, at least in terms of hype and regulation. And hype and speculation is written on both sides. So to be honest, hype and speculation is the reason that we're here. It enabled everything of this. So there is definitely this cautious approach towards secondary markets and speculation. But if you ask me, secondary markets, fractional ownership, stuff like that, is actually one of the bigger promises of blockchain. It's not trustlessness. I can tell you this. Trust is something that we dealt with trust with governments. we don't have a problem with trust en masse. We have problems with friction, we have problems with profit sharing, we have business problems, right? And that is where blockchain and stuff like that actually comes in. So do keep in mind, hype is a plus and minus thing. But yeah, one thing that I wanted to mention, we are hiring a lot of people, namely backend, frontend, and blockchain developers. So if you're one of them, my credentials are on the last slide. So talk to me, shoot me an email. More than happy to discuss. So thank you very much. If you've got questions, I'm more than happy to answer. These are our webpages, my email. Go ahead.
So if you have questions, you can raise your hand or go to sli.do, and the current code is 4383. So who has questions?
Yeah, you mentioned at one point in the presentation that you are exploring other blockchains. Yeah, so could you name what are your what's the landscape you're exploring?
No. I'm joking. So we are looking at, it's a difficult question and it's a difficult case to make. We are definitely looking at, for instance, OneChain. Is something that we have an active partnership with them as well. When we talk about other blockchains and we explore them, it's really a strategic decision that we need to make. So not only does it have to have the base functionality, it also has to be a legit project, which means that it has to be non-volatile to at least some extent. Right? Because the problem with partnering up or going onto other blockchains is 51% attack. Like if you've been in crypto at all, you know that WeChain, for instance, partnered up with Pornhub and got hacked the next week. Right? So good job on that. Which means that it's sort of a nice idea, but in my opinion, Ethereum, I'd be extremely happy if Bitcoin would support something like this, because it is still the most robust blockchain in terms of miner validation and stuff like that. I know it's centralized and there's problems with that, but it's a difficult question to answer, absolutely. But we have a partnership with OneChain, looking at others as well.
You mentioned Brave Browser. Mm-hmm. What is their involvement with crypto coins?
Okay, so basic attention token is, I think, the token that they have. The Brave Browser allows you to, it's sort of a nice UX solution where the browser is inbuilt, the wallet is inbuilt in the browser. So when you go to dApps, you don't have to click on MetaMask, sign a million times, which is a horrible UX thing to deal with. But we're sort of on the other side developing a few applications right now, and it's just a painful process because we go through the demo and we check stuff out, and it's like, okay, so we need to sign this, and then the user clicks there, and he needs to sign this, and he does 2 transactions, and he needs to click twice. It's just, you duplicate steps along the way, right? So from a UX perspective, it's just a horrible thing. To that extent, Brave and Opera are doing a good job. I'm looking forward to Chrome, Safari, and stuff like that being incorporated. But if you ask me about UX, I really think that single sign-on on a system level is the way we move forward. That is what smoothens out the experience. That is what makes it easier.
Time for one more question.
Drum roll.
Okay, that's it. Thank you again. We have a very short 5-minute break. Please do not disrupt the other room if they are in session. Next we'll have Nate Geyer with Showcase of All the Things, a tool for NFT creation and distribution. And then shortly after that, lunch.